Hello, welcome back. Remember, World History people, where we were when last we met. We were discussing the Protestant Reformation and some of the changes the Catholic Church underwent because people thought they weren't quite Catholic-y enough or doing the right thing. So people like Martin Luther and Mr. Calvin and Zwingli came about with some changes to try and improve. Remember, the Reformation was to reform, to fix the Catholic Church. So I want you to pause for a second and put on your Catholic hat and think about what this screen is asking you to do. This Reformation is sweeping through Central Europe. That's Germany, Switzerland, Austria, into the Czech region, even in England and up in Scandinavia. 4 countries, if you can think about what they are. Although Finland's not a country yet, but be Denmark, Sweden, and Norway. And all these ideas are spreading throughout the world. And so the Pope hires you. And he hires you to figure out something you can do to get people to stop converting, to get people to continue to believe in the Catholic Church. What would be 3 things you could think of right now that you could do if you were sent to work by the Pope to stop people from converting? And they don't all have to be nice. But what would be 3 things you could do? And then think about why were the Protestant reformers upset? What were some of the things they were upset about? What could you do about those? I don't know. It's a good question. So take a second, pause this, and think. What would you do before everybody left the Catholic Church? Because think about if you're a part of the Catholic Church, as people leave, you're losing money, you're losing tithing, you're losing all the stuff the church needs. So you got to keep those people coming for a spiritual sense, and then unfortunately or fortunately for a business sense. All right, so let's see what the Catholic Church does today to combat these people trying to mess their mojo. All right, here we go. So the Protestant, this is the Counter Reformation. Again, notice the S in the 1530s. So remember, things don't happen in chunks of time, or one starts, one stops, one starts, one stops. This is going on during the latter stages of the Renaissance. This is going on during the Enlightenment. So all these changes are going on over over a century. So things are slower to get changed, and they take time, and there are other things as well. So they had two tactics that they could do. One, they could actually reform the church. They could make some changes to the Catholic Church. Not a bad idea. I mean, any business or organization can do a couple of things. They can change things from the inside, or they can try and change the people on the outside. Or they could actually stop people from becoming Protestants by, well, in this picture's case, torture or fines or jail time. So there's two methods you can choose, and then different tactics per each method. So this is what the Catholic Church has before them for options to continue. Now, this is just a bigger picture of that torture thing. This is a water torture, where they make them drink water. They don't dunk them; they just keep making them drink water, drink water, drink water, drink water, and I guess not let them go to the bathroom or just go, but keep filling them full of water. Now, sorry about that. Wrong PowerPoint. So enough of the water torture. Here we go. So what does this sentence mean? I recognize the Holy Catholic and Apostolic Roman Church as the mother and mistress of all churches, and I vow and swear true obedience to the Roman Pontiff. Pontiff, oh good, they put it right. Pontiff is a fancy word for Pope. Basically, this is, if you're being tortured, this is what you would say. And this is you saying, look, I may have thought about becoming a Protestant. I may have thought about changing my allegiance. I'm trying to make it sound like something today. but I swear that the Pope is the Pope, and all churches begin and end with the Catholic Church, and I'm going to obey the Pope. Please let me live. That's what this sentence means. All right. And this was written during the Council of Trent. And again, the Council of Trent was a bunch of Catholic officials getting together to figure out what to do about this Protestantism. How do we address this shift away from the Pope having exclusive moral authority over the people of Europe and the world? So remember, there were two paths they could take. This is the first path. This is reform within the church. So let's just take the Catholic Church, or sort of like how a store can kind of retool, or a business can retool how it does things to get better, or how schools, we have school improvement teams, and we have all sorts of different teams to help us get better from within. Because ultimately, the reason people are leaving isn't because humans are different. It's because what they're getting isn't working anymore. So they have this Council of Trent. They hold 3 meetings over this time period, and during this time period, they decide to come up with one universal set of teachings. Because in different parts of Europe and in different parts of other areas in the world where Catholicism, the Catholic Church, was the church, some taught different things. They taught different scriptures, they taught different messages. And so they thought one thing that might help them is if there was just one message. No matter where you went throughout the world and throughout Europe, if you went into a Catholic church, you would hear the same message. It's almost like McDonaldization of the Catholic Church. But if you think about it, it helps them convey one message to all their people. So there's no confusion or less confusion. And then hopefully that one message resonates or gets into the heart of their people. Some things that they changed, and now think about some of these areas that they actually changed. Think about the fact that these were not done prior to this time period. So you have them wanting priests to be educated, which means that before this time they weren't. They wanted improved discipline and administration among the clergy. So make sure that the clergy, and clergy again, fancy word for the priests and the bishops and all those people, that they had rules and laws they had to follow. There was a specific way they were supposed to behave. Unlike in the past where I could say, hey, your Aunt Susie, if you give me so much money, I'll shorten her time in purgatory, or I'll take this money and wear these robes. Well, now they're going to put restrictions on their behavior, including, as you see, as these councils reach its end. So as we get closer to 1563, they ban indulgences altogether. So the whole idea of the get to heaven free card, or the fast pass to heaven, is made illegal. Excuse me. So that's good. But many of the teachings, many of the things that you would get from your priest in your church were not changed. And some of them were actually, they doubled down on them and they enforced them even more. Such as you need faith and good works to achieve salvation. Remember from last time, if you're a Protestant, what did Martin Luther King, I just did that. What would Martin Luther say was the only essential thing to get into heaven? That's correct. The only thing that the Protestants said you needed was, come on, you gonna work for me today? No. Faith. Faith is the only thing you needed in the Protestant church to get to heaven. They kept their 7 sacraments, not just 2. They wrote the Bible in Latin. They kept it in Latin, not in the vernacular language of the people. Hold on one second. Well, that was fun. Okay, let's go back for a second. Remember, in the Protestant church, because of the printing press, the most important invention of all time, the Bible was written in languages of the local people so that they could read and begin to understand what the Bible said to them. Catholic Church is like, nah, it's in Latin. It's always going to be in Latin, and that's the way it is. Which, again, It means that if you accept that, you're okay with that. The Pope is the supreme leader, and man has free will. There is no predestination. God does not have a plan that's already laid out. And free will means just that. You are free to believe or not, and you are free to choose if you're going to follow God or not. That's what free will means. And free will exists in the Christian church today as well. So this is the stuff they did within the church to fix it from the inside. Some things they were a little, these are changes away from, but these are not. This area here, these things, this is them saying, yeah, but you know what? We're still the Catholic Church, and this is still the way it's going to be. But they do have a few changes here. More stuff from within the church. They create new Catholic groups, and these groups begin to look at, these groups are formed within the church, but they look at what they can do outside the church to help the people. So the idea of charity work and good works and things like that. And then this reaffirmed the belief, again, this makes it, if you have the church saying, look, it's not enough just to believe that you have to go do things. If the church is doing both of those things, then you as a follower of the Catholic Church, then you must do those things. So what you start seeing from members of the church, and this is where you get to abbeys and orders and monks, is they began to live among the sick and the poor. They began to focus more attention to the parishes and the churches out in the rural parts away from the cities. So, and they begin to talk about how to be a servant of God means to live piously, which means very religiously, true to the word, and simple living. Again, not having the nicest robes or the nicest houses, but if you are a person of God, then how you live should be humble. And so some of this begins to trickle into how the churches of the Catholic Church moves within and amongst the community. All right. Now, from outside the church, how do you stop Protestants from becoming Protestant? How do you stop Catholics from becoming Protestants? Well, you reassert the fact that you are the all-powerful Catholic Church, that what you say goes, and if you do not agree with us, there will be consequences. So during the Counter Reformation, the Catholic Church was very intolerant. So what they said went, and remember, and for the sake of clarification, Orthodox, I guess the best way to describe Orthodoxy is sort of purist or by the letter. This is what the Bible says. This is what the church does. This is what we're going to do. Anything else is wrong. And it's not just wrong. It's wrong by, you could make it criminally wrong. You could make it pun. It's just not, we're not going to tolerate. There's no tolerance whatsoever. They used a group called the Jesuits, which is another group of Catholics to help spread the word. There was an index of prohibited books. See, books have been banned for centuries, for hundreds, millennia. Books have been banned. And one of my favorite things, well, it's not nice, but it's probably the most famous thing they did to stop people from becoming a Protestant, was the Inquisition. And the most effective part about the Inquisition is no one expected it. But the Inquisition was a court system that dealt with it. Now, first one, the Society of the Jesuits. This was a religious group founded by Ignatius Loyola. All those colleges that, if you ever pay attention to colleges or like college basketball or other things, there's like Loyola of Maryland, Loyola of Chicago. These are all Jesuit Catholic universities. They promoted education. They were missions. So yes, there were people doing missionary work in the Catholic Church to spread the word. And this is interesting. They actually wanted to gain political influence and have a say in laws and how things were done to the cities at large. Okay. And you see competition between Catholics and Protestants to get involved in politics, because if a king chose one church over another, then he would enact laws or acts, which is also the same thing, favoring one group or the other. So there was a very important political bend to all this. And yes, they were deeply, fanatically buying in and bought into their system. They believed in what they did, and they were in your face, very fanatical. Again, remember, fanatic is where fan comes from. So they were rah rah, yay Jesuits, yay Catholic Church, kind of thing. Now, this also is a very interesting quote with respect to where we've been, Renaissance speaking, and where we're headed, the Enlightenment, and it may make a little more sense as we move further along the way. But this is a quote from Ignatius Loyola. We should always be disposed to believe that which appears white is really black, if the hierarchy of the church so decides. There it is. If the Catholic Church says it's so, it is so. If the Catholic Church said this is blue, then it's blue. No matter what your eyes tell you, it's what they say. So if the Pope says no, the answer is no. And where we're going, that's bright. And where we're going with respect to the Enlightenment in the next unit, this is not enlightened thinking. Another way that they stopped the spread of Protestantism was banning books. This was created by the Pope in 1559. This was to prevent heresy. Remember, heresy is it's a vocab term. Make sure you know what heresy is. It banned both Protestant works of literature and philosophy and religious texts. So anything from somebody who admitted to being Protestant, can't read it. And if you feel like it, you can click on the link and see all the books that they banned. And remember, make sure you know what heresy is, because if you don't know what it is, chances are you're a heretic. All right, moving on. Now, moving on. Here we go. Also, the Inquisition. This was a lovely little thing created by the Catholic Church. And this purpose was to find out who the heretics were. So who is practicing heresy, which basically means, I'll spoil it for you, believing things that aren't aligned with the Catholic Church. So if you are saying things that Martin Luther or Zwingli or Calvin adhere to, or the Presbyterians adhere to, or as you see on the slide, if it's Jewish thought or Muslim thought, because by now Islam exists. In fact, Islam's almost a 1,000 years old by now. You are a heretic, and you could be tried for crimes against the church. And this, again, was created to show Europe, show these different groups just who is the religious, spiritual, all-powerful boss in Europe, and that being the Catholic Church. Notice it went on for a long time, 400 years. Now, there were peaks, there were times when it was really, really, really high, and you could imagine that those are probably in the beginning. Mostly in Spain and Italy. Spain specifically, the nation of Spain, and we'll get to him a little bit in the next unit, but Philip II saw himself as almost divinely chosen to make Spain the model Catholic state, and he saw himself as having an obligation to spread Catholicism throughout the world. So it is under Philip that the conquistadors and the explorers go to the New World. It looked different across Europe, but it was most notorious in Spain. Again, it's very ironic, as the slide says, because in Spain was very, very, very Catholic. So if it's a very, very Catholic place, and someone says even the slightest little thing, there's a chance for an overreaction. They were put on trial. They were guilty until proven innocent. That's nice. And you will be tortured until you confess to being a Protestant or a Muslim. And if you converted, well, at least the torture would stop. And typically, you would be let go. If you didn't convert, you would be burned at the stake. That's one possible way to go. Excuse me. Now, the Inquisition was used as an act of faith. The trials were public. It was usually followed by torture or execution. So even if you did admit or convert or say, I'm sorry, I take it all back, they could still technically, if they wanted to, kill you, because what's to keep you from becoming a Protestant again? But also, by doing it in public, what's the other, not benefit, but what's another reason why this group, the Spanish Inquisition, would want to hold this in public? Why are executions in the 16, 17, and 1800s in public? What do you think the reason for that is? And feel free to share below. But you're right. If you said, look, if the people see this happening, well, then it could be them. It could be your neighbor. So what a lovely way to change behavior than by letting people see the punishment that could happen to them, especially when it's as severe as torture or death. So, was the Counter Reformation a success? Well, completely? Think about it. That answer is no, because there are Muslims, there are Jews, there are Protestants, and there are lots of Protestants. So no, ultimately, not a success. But does that mean if it's not a success, it's a complete failure? It did not win back many of the lost souls that had converted to Protestantism, but it did improve its image within the church. So if you are a Catholic, now you don't have to walk around saying, oh, you're one of those people who can buy their way into heaven. Now, missionary work is part of the deal, and the corruption and the idea of the indulgences are done away with. So now the church can begin the process of continuing to heal itself from within, and then who knows? You can keep those that you have. You can keep your flock, and that flock, being Catholic, will have more lambs, and you can have more sheep in your flock, which is good, and maybe it can draw people back. But at least by doing these two things, it reestablishes or reaffirms its sort of place as being here in the importance of Europe. And again, take a second. This is Europe in 1555. Notice these different colors are just showing you religious denominations. The green is Catholics. So throughout almost all of Europe, you're going to find Catholics. Anglicans are over in England and this one part of Ireland. Calvinists, who will eventually become Presbyterians, are in Scotland and up here in Belgium and Holland, and then there's mixed, and all through here again, all in through there you see multiple colors, which means there are multiple religions, multiple denominations living amongst each other, which is why this time period religious wars were constant and nasty in England, in France. Catholics and Protestants, by any name, went back and forth for over 150 years. So not the best time for peace. And now, instead of it being because of an emperor or because of empire, it's over religion. And some things, the more things change, the more things stay the same. All right. So now, can you predict what will happen next? Well, I kind of just told you. So you're going to see religious discord. You're going to see strife and revolution. But you're also going to see, if you go back, let's go back. If you go back to it, it's probably going to be within countries. So you're not going to have France at war with the Holy Roman Empire, perhaps, or Poland at war with Russia. The struggles are going to be within each individual country as the religions try and sort out who's going to follow them and who's going to have the most power. And then I guess you could imagine that the two places that will probably get the most done are going to be over here in the Iberian Peninsula with Spain and Italy, because there is no questioning who the religious authority is. And that's the Catholic Church. So we talked about that. And there is your visualization of what happens in Europe over the next century. In fact, there was one war that was started, and you can look this up, because a guy got thrown out a window. I mean, come on. Can't beat that. All right. So, bloodshed, warfare, religions, and that's it. And these are the sources, and that's the Counter Reformation. Yesterday we had the people saying, you know what, the church needs to change. Today the church says, okay, well, we'll change a little bit. We're not gonna throw away everything. We like being Catholic. So now you have two different groups, and also think about this, and this is the most important thing moving forward. All right, or forward. And I'm gonna write it here. Each one of those groups, whether it's the Catholic Church or the Protestant Church, or different groups within the Catholic Church and then different groups within the Protestant Church, because the Calvinist view of the world is not the same as the Lutheran, and it's not going to be the same as other ones that come later, like the Baptists, the Methodists, or like the Presbyterians. So, worldview becomes a big thing. How you view the world, how you view your place in the world as a person within these religions, how you view your religion, and then how you view the world itself. Like, how do you see others, and how influential is God in deciding this stuff, and what is your role? Our world view is going to change. Remember, it began changing with the Renaissance. It began changing before that with the Crusades and getting all this information. Well, now, because of the greatest invention in the world, and because of different groups and different ways of thinking, that's going to get thrown together, and we're going to start coming up with different ways to view the world. And those worldviews shape where we're going once we explore. But we still have a little ways to go to get there. So our next unit, which will begin Monday, are dealing with the absolute rulers. Again, the kings who come out of this time period and come to power during this time period begin to go more strongly into what we talked about in class about who controls your life. Is it the church or is it me? You're now going to see kings and queens begin to really exert their authority, and they're going to use the fact that the church gave them their power to their advantage. And then what you're going to see happen is that these different kings and queens of these different countries begin to look at their countries as being important. So the idea of nationalism, the idea of England being England and France being France, the stuff we talked about yesterday, become a really big deal. And these leaders are going to try and figure out how to make their country great, whether it be a great Catholic country like Spain did, whether it be a great economic country like England's going to do eventually, or Spain as well, because of the gold and silver they bring back from the New World. But then it's going to become a competition. It's going to become an arms race to see who can be the most powerful, wealthiest country in the world. That starts here. And also remember, as we're talking about worldview, I know this is a lot. We're talking about worldview. They're going to accidentally realize that there's a whole other half of the planet, and they're going to bring back stuff from there. And the next stage, the exploration and colonization stage of the history of the world that we are discussing, the importance on our lives right now cannot be understated, because if you like coffee or chocolate, you got to be glad this happened, because without exploration, there'd be no bacon or barbecue. And we'll talk more about that next time. Y'all have a great day. Take care. Be safe.